All right, we're back live, Bobby from the Bronx,
Hola.
and Victor here, Vaccinated V. What else? What else do people call me?
Vic from Valencia,
Okay.
Metropolitan Man, the expat whisperer.
Oh, you're being very kind. I thought you were going to insult me again. Hey, hey guys, we wanted to discuss our favorite topic of why Republicans should be voting for Biden this year. And we're always doing it in a lighthearted, fun way, but it is actually a very important thing. What do you think about that, Bobby?
I think everybody should. I think this should be a blowout election. I mean, it's very clear what the choices are.
All right, so we had some developments yesterday. Do you want to share any your views on what happened yesterday? You want to jump into why, in general, Trump is an inferior president in terms of an alternate choice to the great Biden?
Let's do that. Let's do that.
So people who didn't watch the last episode, what's your story? Very quickly.
Sure. So I'm from the Bronx, New York. My wife and I moved to Barcelona, going on almost 2 years now. Absolutely love it. Don't ever want to leave. But I continue to follow U.S. politics regularly. Pretty much too much, too much even for my wife. But I wrote why I think, as a former Republican libertarian, now Biden Democrat, why I think Biden's been one of the best presidents in U.S. history. It's a pretty extensive article. It's about 7 pages. I go over a long list of reasons why. We discuss some of them in part 1, his healthcare accomplishments, his economic accomplishments, his other really good historic efforts in the judiciary and various laws, and just continuing that conversation.
All right, let's jump into it.
Let's go, baby.
So what should we know about Joe Biden that should convince a Republican red voter to make a switch in 2024?
Well, if he loses, he's going to concede and then leave, which is what everybody should want. Sorry, if Joe Biden loses, President Biden loses, he will concede the election. He will leave.
So proper democracy, transfer of power.
Exactly. Number one, and above all, that's exactly what Joe Biden's going to do because he's an honorable, respectable man.
And what about the alternative?
The alternative is going to send an armed mob to Congress to try to beat up on cops for hours to force their way into the Capitol to try to do Lord knows what with their weapons to prevent the certification of their cult leaders' loss.
All right, but now you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, sure. Republicans.
Let's go back to trying to understand why Republicans should vote.
Absolutely. Well, as we discussed last time, violent crime is down for multiple years straight, 3 years in a row. Murders are down, property crime is down. It's very important to Republicans. Joe Biden also conceded in a negotiation to one of the most strict border policies that the U.S. has ever enforced. The Border Patrol approved it. The Chamber of Commerce approved it. It was actually something to begin a process. I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan, but I understand the compromise necessary in Washington, D.C., and doing nothing is not really an option.
So this was really brought forward by Republicans.
Yes, it's a Republican plan. Republican senators with Democrat senators negotiated it. It's entirely Republican priority, which is why I think, like some people to the left, but aren't such a big fan. But it does do some good, and it does start to solve what is a humanitarian crisis at the border, and more judges, more asylum officers, so we can help people get processed who are fleeing from cartel terrorism in South and Central America and really all over the world. And the Republicans will enjoy those priorities because there's more devices to detect fentanyl. There's more money for Border Patrol. There's money for all sorts of border initiatives that I think.
But we got torpedoed, right?
The House Republicans decided that they weren't going to go along with the the Senate Republicans and the other Republicans that also endorsed this plan. They torpedoed it. They torpedoed it allegedly because Donald Trump said, "I want to run on the problem." That's what's been reported anyway, that he would rather let this crisis continue than actually solve it.
So they had an opportunity to try to fix a problem that they've been heralding and beating up Joe Biden about it. But let me ask you this. What did Donald Trump do when he was in power? Did he address this problem?
He talked a lot. He put old wall he reinforced old wall, never really built much new wall. And literally, I can't think of a single thing he did. I don't think he passed any immigration laws whatsoever. No, yeah, I think.
Well, he repealed DACA. So
right. He tried to. He failed. They were so inept at doing it. Even the right-wing Supreme Court had to throw their efforts out because their plain old bigotry. They were so hyped up on the bigotry, they didn't get the process correct, and even that was too much for this Republican Supreme Court that they had to throw their attempts out. Obviously, Joe Biden is different. He wants to legalize these. Americans, they've lived here their whole lives. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. When you come here as a kid, you don't have a choice in the matter. You should listen. You're here. You're in good standing. You're going to school. You're contributing to the economy. You're being part of the American dream. Enough of this. We should help these people on their path towards citizenship. It wasn't in the bill, but it's a Democrat priority. And if the Democrats take both houses, they'll solve this border security, this humanitarian crisis, and you don't have to worry about whatever Donald Trump, this nightmarish send jackbooted stormtroopers to nonviolent people's homes to throw them in a van type stuff that he does, or separating families on purpose. We need humanity to solve this crisis, and I think Joe Biden and the Democrats can bring that.
All right, let me ask you another thing. One of the areas that the Democrats need to do is to make sure that women, African Americans, and Latinos or Hispanic Americans show up to vote. And one of the things that I believe is really should be a concern to Republicans is basically over 50% of the electorate of the eligible people to vote are women. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump and the Republicans have been historically and consistently taking away rights from women, reproductive rights, and access to health care. And how do you think this is going to play out with Republican women who want this health care and need this health care, but under the GOP line of thinking, as well as Donald Trump's continued attack on their rights?
Right.
Isn't this an issue that the Democrats should be putting front and center?
Well, isn't it a freedom issue, right? I mean, if you're a constitutional conservative, you're a limited government conservative, you're about freedom. A woman having to check with the state Supreme Court so she can get an abortion so she doesn't become infertile is an insane thing that we shouldn't actually allow for, because women, we know why Roe v. Wade started. It's because women were dying. Poor women were dying. If you're pro-life, it was not the pro-life position whatsoever. And if you're going to tell women that you're going to attack IVF, you're going to attack birth control, you're going to attack their reproductive rights, that's not the Freedom Party. You're making women, you're subjugating women, you're making them second-class citizens. There's a whole discussion to have about pro-life and pro-choice and try to help women in these dire circumstances where this stuff happens. But at the end of the day, it's a freedom issue. If you're free in America, are you free in America or are you not free in America? And I think reasonable Republicans understand, and the Biden position is right there. He's an 81-year-old Catholic Irish man who says he's going to codify Roe v. Wade protections. I mean, if an 81-year-old Irish Catholic man can figure this out, I feel like the rest of us can as well. There are reasonable positions that keep the freedoms that Americans have enjoyed without these horrifying consequences. We've heard, 10-year-old victims of atrocities having to leave states for reproductive health care. It's a nightmare. And you can't have a country where multiple states have different laws about this thing. How do companies expand? How are you going to recruit women in Alabama? How are you going to recruit women to work for you in Tennessee and in these places? Texas. Texas is one of the worst.
And one of the things is, when I was a Republican, one of the things I really liked about the Republican position was the idea of a smaller, less intrusive government. I can't imagine a more intimate attack on a person's liberty than trying to tell them what they need to do with their body, man or women. And here we are, they're overturning long established laws. That's not very conservative. That's not conservative, not conservative anything. And the other thing is, if you're going to turn away women, if you're going to be turning away Hispanics, if you don't really offer the African Americans something to look forward to in the Republican Party, whether it's in 2024 or further down the year, 4, 8, 12 years from now, what are you offering these other Americans? Otherwise, if the last, 8 or 9 elections, do you know how many times the Republicans have won the popular vote?
Oh, it was W. Bush's second term, I think.
Very good. Most people don't know that. You didn't hesitate. Only one time since 1992 have the Republicans won the popular vote. Why is that?
Frankly, it's because their policies don't appeal. As you said, this restrictive, hyper-conservative, socially element of the party that is now taken over, they're not even attempting to compromise. They're not even attempting to find, So, like, if you have an agenda, the way you get that done is to negotiate with the other party to come to some sort of compromise and bring progress on what your agenda is. What this Republican Party wants to do is put their boots on our throats. That's not the party of freedom. That's not the party of Reagan. That's not the party of constitutional conservatism. They're against big government when it's coming to feeding people's kids or helping with healthcare needs or environmental protections. But then they want big government if you, Lord forbid, you want to bring your kids to see some man dressed as Cinderella and read Cinderella to them. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Do you have freedom or don't you? I think it's, and when you talk about the policies, I mean, I don't understand why. I have African American members of my family, and we have these discussions a lot. Donald Trump tried to throw millions of African American votes in the garbage in 2020. So these sort of narratives that, like, oh, he's more popular. No, he's not. He's actually just benefiting from a program, not a program, like a sort of perception from Americans where when a president leaves office, they're sort of just out of your brain. You never have to think about I mean, how many times do you think about Obama or George W. Bush or Bill Clinton? You know, maybe you see them give a speech or something and it pops up in your head. So we're in this sort of territory where it hasn't become realized that Donald Trump, the man who wants to mass deport immigrants, the man who wants to separate families, the man who wants to throw votes in the trash if you don't vote for him, the man who wants to enable his followers to go after your IDF, to use the Comstock Act to ban your birth control and your mifepristone, this is not the party of freedom. The Democrats almost stumbled into being the party of freedom, and now they are. It's quite clear that, like, this is, if you want the freedom to vote, if you want the freedom to body autonomy, if you want the freedom of migration, if you want the freedom to not have the government get in between you, your kids, and your doctor's medical decisions, this Republican Party is just not for you anymore.
Is there a Republican Party? It's not a Trumplicans. It's not. The principles of the Republican Party doesn't even exist. And
unfortunately, no.
And again, we're watching a presidential candidate with zero platform. The only thing in his platform is beat Biden by cheating if necessary, and if he doesn't win, basically rile up the base of the Republican Party even before an election has taken place to claim that something fraudulent has taken place, even if he has. I mean, the guy lost by over 7 million votes last time. I'm predicting he's going to win by a much larger majority, but the Biden administration really needs to get the messages out on all the great things that they're achieving.
Right. At the end of the day, what improvements in your life have been from 4 years ago when we had so many dead Americans, they needed refrigerator trucks outside of hospitals to bring them in while the president was spewing charlatan snake oil cures? Because that's a whole other thing. His bungling of COVID cost a lot of lives. And he was the empirically proven #1 source of disinformation or misinformation during COVID. Now, I think that's a really big problem for people when you realize, hey, listen, maybe 2018, 2019, it felt differently because your delivery order was cheaper. But it's totally a much better situation now when you have a stable president who is willing to compromise, who's willing to be a president for all Americans. He goes down when there's tornadoes in Alabama and Florida. He could say, you didn't vote for me, I'm not going to help you, like somebody else might say. President Biden, when you know that win or lose, President Biden isn't going to use the power of government against you maliciously.
Because you didn't vote for him.
Exactly, because you didn't vote for him, right. Like, you know that you can be safe in whatever your decision is, that President Biden is going to be a president for all Americans. He's not going to abuse his power. He's not going to try to be a king. He's not going to try to sell you autographed Bibles and sneakers either. I like that part. I don't need to be hopped Bibles on Easter week to try to help this guy pay his defamation lawsuits.
Yeah, defamation, a very, very biblical guy when he's having all this sex with different porn stars and movie stars. And then he tries to play like a holier than thou kind of.
Well, let's talk about that. If you're a religious conservative, if you're more on the side of Christianity, I'm a baptized Catholic. I understand these types of background. I'm a young Irish Catholic man. Does the president, who's very humble and who goes to church every week, somebody that you should sort of maybe think is going to have a better interpretation of just those principles and how you actually should go about in your life, or is it going to be the guy who literally uses Bibles as props? I mean, I don't understand what the choice is here. Listen, Biden's going to have a lot of different opinions than most Republicans, but at the end of the day, he can be negotiated with. No matter where your positions are, he's shown the ability to evolve on positions. And I think that's a big thing because you need to compromise. There's no my way or the highway in representative government. You need to be able to discuss and debate the issues and the agenda that you want to push forward. And that's where the Democrat Party is finding a historic amount of bipartisan compromise. I mean, look at the Chips and Sciences Act. Look at the infrastructure, one of the largest infrastructure acts since Eisenhower. I mean, it's absolutely crazy the amount of work that reaching across the aisle that President Biden and the Democrats under him have been able to do. I mean, we fixed a lot of loopholes in the Electoral Count Act in a bipartisan fashion. We codified gay marriage protections into federal law in a bipartisan fashion. And again, if you're about freedom, these are freedom issues: the freedom to have your vote counted, the freedom to not have your vote supplanted by fake electors in an illegal criminal scheme.
And then trying to protect them when they know that the law is finally going to come after them. 3.5 years to come to trial, and we're still not even there. We all witnessed what happened on January 6th, both the rioters and all these other people who have gone to jail already. And the leader of the tribe is out free, and he's using their money to pay for his legal bills.
He's not even
insane.
He's not even out free. He's actively celebrating the people that ransacked the Capitol and tormented and abused cops for hours. This pro-law and order man and his pro-law and order party sat with his feet up while his supporters beat the living hell out of cops for hours to ransack the Capitol and throw representative democracy and millions of your votes in the trash. Biden and Biden supporters will never do that. Will never, ever do that. And that's what if you're a Republican voter, you want stability or do you want 3 a.m. tweets?
All right.
Do you want, the choice?
Question then. So what can we do? What difference can we make?
You and I right now?
Yeah.
Just in breaking down these topics that are often complex for people that are too busy. You have kids, you have a job, you have 2 jobs, you have a long life. You're not going to be able to get into the minutia, get into the weeds of these policies that are having massive return on investment. Again, I go back to the Chips and Sciences Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the infrastructure laws. These are going to make tangible differences in your life every single day as they play out. But it's not something that's a light switch. It doesn't turn on tomorrow. So I think just advocating the fact that this choice is very clear, that the contrasts are very clear. I mean, what we have here is, it's not even, people like to pretend both parties are the same somehow, but this choice couldn't be polar opposites more.
And one of the things that we like to recall is the power of the expats to get registered to vote, because there was such a small, margin of victory in many states. But the work that the Democrats abroad have been doing to make sure that their voices are heard, whether it's for taxes, for social policy, or for protecting women, our votes abroad count very much. And so
it's a great organization. Just speaking for myself, we're speaking for ourselves here. Just getting people registered to vote and participate in a nonpartisan fashion.
Yeah, votefromabroad.org is bipartisan. So you should ask somebody if you need help on how to register to vote. I have so many people thinking it's complicated. They don't know how to do this. The other night at dinner, my own daughters were telling me they didn't know why they had not yet registered to vote. So I got them registered to vote. It took literally about 60 seconds. You can do it online, votefromabroad.org.
It's a good thing. It's like we said, it's nonpartisan. I don't have to agree with you to know that you have the right to vote. You were born with the right to vote. And if you want to use it, I can disagree with you on everything, but I do agree that we both have the right to vote and we should use it. So I'm willing to help anybody register to vote, whether I disagree with them completely or not, because it's the right thing to do. And a lot of people that volunteer for different organizations, there's a lot of different really good ones. I've checked out the Vote from Abroad website. It's really very easy to use, and it's really very intuitive, and it's a crucial election. I don't think this is one people should skip. I really don't. I said before, I think it's one of the most important elections in our history.
Now, what do you think is going to happen with this the trial supposed to start on the hush money?
April 15th, allegedly.
On tax day.
Tax day, April 15th, tax day. Yeah, and then he's alleged to commit a bunch of tax crimes. I think we're gonna get more nonsense delay tactics, more motions like Hey, what about this immunity thing where the president gets to shoot people on Fifth Avenue and he can't be arrested for it? There's going to be a lot of delay, but I think it's very minimal in the New York City situation that there's not really much interference he can do with that. He's been able to game the system, like I said last time, and push back the federal trials because those things are going to take a while. But I think this Manhattan thing is going to be pretty clear. It's just all paper. It's clear as day. I mean, what he did, that's why Michael Cohen went to prison. If you order your lawyer to commit crimes for you, you're not off the hook because you became president. And this trial should have happened years ago, but because he was president and because he was able to delay things and put them into appeals processes after appeals process after appeals processes, it finally just landed on his lap now. And thank goodness it did, because there wouldn't be any accountability before the election. Georgia's not going anywhere anytime soon. That's a massive RICO case that involves 24 people. I think 6 of them have already confessed and admitted to wrongdoing. This is the case that's going to say, listen, is Donald Trump what he says he is? And if Donald Trump gets convicted on this, with his company convicted, his CFO convicted, his lawyer convicted, we can stop pretending he's the law and order candidate. The law and order candidate is Joseph R. Biden, not Donald Trump.
I think we need to end it right there.
No.
Law and order candidate, Joe Biden, not Trump, who's now under indictment and going to trial for federal crimes as well as municipal and state crimes.
Don't forget the lawsuits. I mean, already
$60 million in legal fees. And they've changed I heard that people who are donating money to help Donald Trump, the very first thing that their money is going to be used are for his crimes, not the Republican Party, not state senators, not representatives, and not even Donald Trump's candidacy. It is to pay his legal fees.
He put his daughter in charge of daughter-in-law in charge of the RNC. It's his daughter-in-law. Like, imagine Joe Biden did that. Like no, it's going to be my daughter's husband is going to run the DNC now. I mean, we'd be flipping out. We'd be going absolutely crazy. I just think there's scandal fatigue, and the media has a recency, has a new news, but they always want to gravitate towards something new. When Donald Trump does something insane, like put his daughter-in-law in charge of the RNC, it sometimes doesn't even register. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But I think if you're a Republican, if you're leaning in that direction, you can comfortably say, hey, listen, Joe Biden, I know he's instituted a lot of more progressive, more to the left policies, but there is massive return on those investments. We can debate those policies, but at the end of the day, he's not going to try to destroy representative democracy. He's not going to throw your votes in the garbage. He's not going to bend the knee for dictators. If you're a Republican, I mean, this Putin bootlicking that Trump does, I mean, it's almost like you forget the Cold War. It's almost like, I mean, how there's not a dictator Donald Trump met he doesn't like.
Are there any generals or senior military members that aren't criticizing Trump? People who work with him closely on a daily basis that don't have really harsh things to say about him? And these are people he handpicked to work for him. And now all of them will not endorse him, and in fact, regret ever having done anything with him.
His own vice president won't endorse him. Why is that? Why is that? You imagine if Kamala Harris was like, I'm not going to endorse Joe. It would be the biggest story on planet Earth for months. But this is just, we forgot. It's the man's vice president. Well, his national security people are scared to death about him getting these national security updates that candidates for president tend to get. His former people are on news stations talking about a potential dictatorship. He's saying it himself. This isn't, listen, at the end of the day, Joe Biden, you can have a lot of disagreements with Joe Biden, that's fine. But he's not going to be a day one dictator. He's going to be a president for Americans and try to make the world a better place, which I believe he's trying to do. I believe he's a decent man trying to do good in the world. I don't believe some of these caricatures of him at all. I think they're made in bad faith. I think if you look at the record, it's pretty clear of what the actions are. You can take words, you can take actions. I want to see the actions, and with the Biden-Harris administration, I've seen the actions. And I think you can be proud from any political background. Any political background, there's something that Joe Biden has done that you can be proud of. Are you about student loan reforms? Are you about combating terrorism? Are you about being freedom? Are you about freedom? Are you about the economy and crime? There's a lot of things that can motivate you, especially if you care about climate change. Nobody in the history of the world has done more in the climate change than Joseph R. Biden. Nobody. He's leaps and bounds above everybody. Let's leave it there for this time. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing this once or twice a month,
and
Yes.
we are excited about the advancements that are taking place. I'm Victor here at Metropolitan.
I'm Bobby from the Bronx. I want to help you vote. I want to discuss things. I want to make sure we can come to conclusions that help everybody, and these types of compromises that are necessary to move representative democracy forward.
All right. Well, thanks. Tune in, and we'll be in touch soon.
Hasta
Let us know
luego.
how we can help you vote.
Hasta luego.